forbidden entry. The galaxy was wide and full of countless stars, yet some regions carried a shadow. Among them was the sector known as human space for centuries. Most alien species whispered warnings about this place, telling stories in quiet tones, but arrogance often blinds the strong, and curiosity often tempts the bold. The Zelthar Dominion was one of the younger empires, rich with fleets and burning pride. Their commanders had heard the old tales about humans, stories of brutal wars and victories against stronger foes, but they laughed at those warnings, calling them nothing but myths. According to their own records, humans were a small, fragile species from a blue planet. They had no ancient empire, no godlike weapons, no divine bloodlines to the Zelthar. Humans were just one more race to test, one more border to cross. The alien commander, Varen, sat on the bridge of his warship, his eyes fixed on the star map ahead. A long line of human space borders glowed red, bright markers of warning. Human space is closed. Enter at your own risk, the automated beacons repeated in many languages. To him, these warnings were a challenge, not a shield. Humans are soft, he told his crew. If they had real power, they would not hide behind threats. His officers laughed, some nervously, some eagerly. They believed their fleet of 30 warships was more than enough to break through. They believed the stories were just fear spread by cowards. The fleet moved forward, leaving behind the last beacon. The beacons did not follow. They did not chase. They only repeated their cold message again and again. Once the ships crossed the line, silence filled the void. No new warnings, no patrol ships, only an empty stretch of dark space. At first, the aliens felt pride. They thought the humans were too scared to meet them. But as the hours passed, a strange unease grew. The sensors began to fail without reason. One ship reported that its long-range radar went blind, as if something blocked all signals. Another claimed to hear faint echoes, whispers across communication lines. The crew grew restless, their laughter faded. The silence of human space felt heavy, unnatural. It was as if the stars themselves were watching. Waiting, Varen stood tall, refusing to show fear. Keep moving, he ordered. Humans are only trying to frighten us. But in his own chest, a shadow of doubt stirred. He had seen many battles, fought against great fleets, yet this silence felt different. The humans had not attacked, not even appeared. They had simply let the intruders walk into the dark. Hours later, one of the rear ships vanished. No explosion, no distress signal, just gone. The commander demanded answers, but none came. Sensor error, an officer said. Maybe they jumped out by mistake. But everyone knew the truth. Ships do not just vanish, fear spread through the fleet like poison. The empty stars felt closer now. The silence heavier, then came the message. Not from their own systems, not from their allies, but from the void itself. A human voice, calm, cold, and without emotion. You have entered human space uninvited, it said. Leave now, or none will leave alive. The words echoed through every ship. Carried in a signal no one could block. For a moment, silence followed. The kind of silence that freezes the heart. Some officers whispered to retreat. Others demanded to press forward. Varen clenched his fists, pride battling against fear. Empty threats, he spat. We are the Zelthar Dominion. No human can stop us. Yet deep inside, he felt the truth pressing against him. The missing ship, the broken sensors, the heavy silence, it was all a warning. Still, he silenced his doubts. Set course deeper into their territory, he ordered, his voice louder than his heart. The fleet engines roared, lights cutting across the darkness one step further, one challenge deeper into forbidden space. The crew followed, though many felt cold sweat on their skin. They could not shake the feeling that something was watching. Every shadow seemed alive, every signal felt like a trap. And though they moved with pride, the silence of human space whispered a single truth. They had crossed a border they should never have touched. And already the darkness was closing in. Echoes of past warnings across the galaxy. Stories about humans traveled from one empire to another. They were told in whispers at war councils, spoken by old veterans in dim halls. Some called them legends. Others swore they were warnings carved into history. The truth was often ignored until the lesson came too late. The Karen Empire still remembered the Battle of the Silent Moon, an event where a fleet of 100 ships had vanished in a single night. Survivors, no more than a handful, spoke of human ships that moved like ghosts, appearing and disappearing with terrifying speed. Their weapons were not the strongest. But their tactics were beyond reason. They fought as if they could read the enemy's every move before it happened. The Draylen tribes told another tale. One of their warlords once tried to raid a human colony. The warlord expected an easy victory, for humans were young and few, yet the raid ended in flames. Every ship destroyed, every warrior lost. The tribe's elders carved a warning on their sacred walls. Do not test the children of Earth, for they carry the fire of stars. Yet even with such stories alive in memory, many empires chose arrogance over wisdom. They believed humans were lucky, not skilled. They believed human victories were rare accidents, not signs of strength to them. Humanity was a shadow that could be ignored. Until the shadow grew too close, the Zelthar Dominion was one of those who refused to listen. Their leader, Varen, dismissed the tales as weak myths of cowardly races. On his bridge, his officers debated in hushed tones. Some had heard of the warnings their families told them to never step into human space. Others, young and eager for glory, laughed at the fear. To hide from humans is shameful, they said. Better to conquer them and prove our worth. Still, there was unease. Each officer could feel the weight of the silence around them. The border beacons were behind them now, and the stars felt colder than ever. One officer finally dared to speak. My lord, the humans, they are not like others. Every empire that underestimated them paid a heavy price. Varen turned, his eyes sharp and burning with pride. Those who lost were weak. We are not weak, we are Zelthar. And we will show the galaxy what happens when humans face true warriors. But even as he spoke, the echoes of past warnings grew louder. Some crew whispered prayers, others refused to sleep. Every shadow in the dark reminded them of the tales they had mocked. And far away, beyond the sight of their sensors, something stirred unknown to the Zelthar fleet. Humans had already detected their intrusion. The moment their ships crossed the border, silent alarms spread across human defense networks. Unlike the arrogant invaders, humans did not laugh. They prepared, they watched, they waited. For humans remembered every insult, every loss, every time their space was violated, and they never forgave. Back on the fleet, another ship vanished. This time it was seen, swallowed in a blinding flash before sensors went dark. The crew screamed, systems failed, and then nothing. The silence after the explosion was worse than the sound of battle. Varen's crew stared at the fading light, their hearts sinking. But their commander clenched his jaw and growled, malfunction, nothing more. Keep moving forward. Yet in the minds of his soldiers, the truth was clear. The old stories were not myths, they were warnings. And the echoes of those warnings now followed them deeper into the dark. One young officer whispered under his breath, if the humans gave us a chance to leave, maybe we should listen. But his voice was drowned in the roar of engines as the fleet pressed on, each ship carrying fear like a weight, each crew member remembering the tales told by elders. And though pride carried them forward, in their hearts they already knew. They had stepped into a place where warnings were carved in blood. And soon they would learn why no one returned alive. First contact with fire. The Zelthar fleet moved deeper into the dark, pride carrying them forward while fear hid in every shadow. The silence of human space was crushing, but still no patrol ships appeared. No defenses revealed themselves. To the arrogant it looked like weakness, but to the wise it felt like a trap waiting to close. Then without warning, the first signal came. A small blip appeared on the edge of their scanners. One ship, small compared to their massive warships, drifted slowly in the void. Its hull was dark, its lights cold, yet it moved with calm purpose. It was human. The first true sight of their enemy. Commander Varen leaned forward, his lips curling into a cruel smile. One ship, he sneered. They send us only one ship. His officers cheered, eager for a quick and easy kill. Orders flew, weapons locked, and the fleet prepared to fire. But before they could strike, the human ship moved. It did not run, it did not hide. Instead, it fired a single blast, sharp and precise. One Zelthar cruiser exploded instantly, cut apart as if by invisible blades. The crew of the other ships froze in shock. They had expected a long exchange of fire, yet in one instant a warship was gone. The human ship's voice echoed across the comms, calm, steady, without a hint of fear. You have crossed into forbidden space. Turn back now, or none will leave alive. The words carried more weight than weapons. Each syllable pressed on the crew like the cold hand of death. But pride was poison, and Varen drank deeply. Fire everything, he roared, his voice cracking the silence. Dozens of weapons lit the void. beams and torpedoes tearing toward the lone human ship. Explosions filled the dark, but when the light faded, the ship still stood untouched. It had moved faster than their eyes could follow, sliding through fire like a shadow. Then came the counterstrike. The human ship released a storm of fire, every shot aimed with impossible precision. 3 more Zelthar ships burned in seconds. Their screams cut short as they vanished into wreckage. The fleet panicked, officers shouting, sensors failing, chaos spreading. Yet the human ship moved with calm grace, striking once, disappearing, then striking again. It was not fighting for survival. It was hunting. Varen gritted his teeth, anger twisting into fear. "This is not possible," he growled. "No ship can fight like this." But deep in his heart, he knew the truth. The old stories were real. The warnings were true, and they were living them now. Some officers begged to retreat, their voices breaking. Others argued to fight harder, refusing to accept defeat. But before any decision could be made, the human ship did something that froze their blood. It stopped. It turned its lights on, flooding the dark with white fire, and across every channel, its voice returned colder than before. "This is your last chance. Leave now, or none will leave alive." The silence that followed was unbearable. Every Zelthar soldier stared at the glowing ship, their hearts pounding like drums. They felt as if the void itself had spoken, as if death wore the skin of a human. Still, Varen refused to surrender. He shouted orders, demanding the fleet surround the human ship. But even as they moved, shadows stirred behind them. From the blackness of space, more ships appeared. Not 1, not 10, but dozens. Human ships sliding out of the dark like predators from the hunt. They had been there all along. Waiting, silent, unseen, now they revealed themselves, surrounding the fleet in a perfect ring. The trap had closed and the Zelthar were caught. Panic spread like fire through the alien fleet. Some ships tried to run, only to be torn apart in seconds. Others froze, weapons shaking in their hands. The humans did not rush, they did not roar. They struck with precision, every attack final, every strike merciless. Varen stood on his bridge, sweat running down his brow. He had wanted to prove his strength, to make the galaxy fear his people. But in that moment, as human fire lit the void, he realized the truth. His name, his fleet, his empire would be remembered, not for victory, but as another echo in the long list of warnings. Another example of what happens when pride blinds the foolish. The first contact with fire was not a battle. It was a lesson, and for the Zelthar Dominion, it was already too late. The trap tightens. The void around the Zelthar fleet grew colder. The single human patrol ship had already proven itself far deadlier than expected. But now dozens of human vessels emerged from the shadows, their outlines sharp, their weapons glowing faintly like embers before a storm. It was clear to everyone the Zelthar were not facing chance patrols. They were surrounded from the very beginning. Commander Varen stood frozen on the bridge, his pride clashing with a creeping terror. He had led fleets across countless wars, crushed rebellions, burned worlds, yet never had he seen such silence. The human ships did not boast. They did not threaten. They only moved with deadly calm. It was the silence of a predator that already knew it had won. One officer whispered, "And we are caught," his voice trembling. Another tried to steady his tone. "Perhaps we can break through if we charge all together." But deep inside, everyone knew the truth. The humans had been watching them from the moment they crossed the border. Every step deeper into forbidden space had been planned, guided aloud. The Zelthar were not hunters at all. They were prey, led willingly into the killing ground. A sudden transmission cut through the void. Not from one human ship, but from all of them. Voices joined into one cold statement. "You are inside human space. There will be no retreat." The words echoed like iron across every bridge. Crew members shook with fear, some refusing to look at the screens as if avoiding the human gaze could save them. Varen slammed his fist against the console. "No retreat," he snarled. "Then we fight until the stars themselves burn." He ordered the fleet into a tight wedge formation, engines roaring, weapons heating with desperate fire. The Zelthar ships charged forward, aiming to pierce a gap in the human line. But as soon as they moved, the trap revealed its true teeth. The void lit up with sudden fury. Human minds, invisible until triggered, erupted around the charging ships. Explosions tore through their formation, ripping cruisers apart, leaving fire and broken steel in their wake. Screams filled the comms, officers shouting for aid, pilots begging for orders. The neat wedge formation collapsed into chaos, burning debris scattering across the stars. Then the human dreadnoughts appeared. Massive shapes slid from the dark, each larger than any Zelthar ship. Their hulls bristled with weapons, glowing like constellations of death. Slow, heavy, unstoppable. They advanced with the certainty of executioners against them. The Zelthar fleet looked like insects swarming around a mountain. Panic spread quickly. Some Zelthar captains turned their ships around, trying to escape the tightening noose. But every retreat was cut short by more hidden human squadrons. Every escape route was blocked. Every star path closed. The trap was perfect. Merciless, absolute. On one ship, a young officer fell to his knees, covering his face with trembling hands. "They knew," he whispered. "They knew we would come." "They were waiting!" Another officer shouted at him to rise. But the fear was contagious. Crew members looked around, each seeing the same truth reflected in each other's eyes. They had walked into a war not meant to be fought, but to be ended. Varen refused to yield. His voice roared across the fleet, commanding them to focus fire on a single dreadnought. Dozens of ships turned their weapons on one massive human vessel. The void burned with their combined fury, beams of plasma and torpedoes striking in unison. For a moment hope flickered, as explosions lit the dreadnought's hull. But when the light cleared, the ship still stood, shields glowing, weapons charging, and then it fired one blast, a beam so wide it split the dark like a sunrise. The Zelthar's lead battleship disintegrated instantly. Reduced to dust and silence, shock waves rattled nearby ships. Alarms screaming, crews panicking. The message was clear. The humans could take their fury, multiply it tenfold, and return it without effort. Now the trap closed fully. Human ships advanced slowly, methodically, each strike cutting another Zelthar ship apart. There was no rush, no chaos in their attack. Only precision. It was not a battle, it was a demonstration. The Zelthar Dominion had dared to cross into forbidden space, and now they were being erased as a warning to all. Varen's pride burned away, replaced with the bitter taste of despair. He looked at the fading stars beyond his screen and realized they were no longer a path of freedom. They were walls, cold and merciless, closing in with every passing moment, and inside those walls, his fleet was nothing but prey waiting for the slaughter. The trap had tightened, and there was no way out. Humanity's true face. The stars themselves seemed to grow darker as the human dreadnoughts advanced. Every Zelthar officer, every soldier, every frightened crew member on those ships now saw the truth. Humans did not build their fleets to look grand. They built them to kill. Their vessels were not polished with beauty. They were shaped with purpose. Each weapon, each shield, each movement screamed of one single design: war without mercy. For centuries, the Zelthar had mocked the old stories. They laughed at the tales of human soldiers who fought like machines, who turned battlefields into graveyards. But now, here in the silent void, the Zelthar saw with their own eyes what others had tried to warn them. Humans did not simply fight, they hunted, they punished, they erased. A human dreadnought opened fire, unleashing a storm of energy that cut through 3 Zelthar cruisers at once. Another vessel released swarms of drones, small machines that darted like wasps, tearing through engines and cutting ships to pieces. The aliens fired back in desperation, filling the void with chaotic light. Yet the humans moved with calm rhythm, as if every move had been calculated long before the first shot was fired. Inside his flagship, Commander Varen felt his chest grow heavy. He had always believed in the strength of numbers, the courage of soldiers, the pride of his people, but none of those things mattered here. The humans fought as one, not a scattered fleet of individuals, but a single living machine. Every ship supported the next, every strike coordinated with flawless timing. It was not war, it was a demonstration of perfection. A voice cut through the comms once again, the same cold, unshaken tone that had haunted them since they crossed the border. "You were warned," the voice said, "yet you chose arrogance. Now you will pay the price." The words fell like a final sentence from a judge, and the Zelthar knew. They were no longer combatants, they were condemned. Another wave of human fire came, and another Zelthar battleship was torn apart. This time survivors floated in the wreckage, their screams echoing on open comms. One voice cried out, "They see everything. They know where we move before we move." Another shouted in panic, "We are fighting shadows, not ships." But the humans did not respond. They did not argue, they only killed. Some Zelthar tried to beg, opening open channels, pleading for mercy. "We surrender," one captain shouted. "We yield. Spare us." But the humans did not answer. They had given their warning at the border. They had repeated it in the silence. Mercy was not their language, consequences were. The galaxy had always misunderstood humans, thinking them weak because they were young. But here was the truth. Youth did not mean weakness. It meant hunger. It meant fire. It meant growth without limit. Varen gripped the railing of his command deck. His knuckles white, he looked at the destruction, at his fleet breaking apart. And for the first time in his life he felt small. The power of the Zelthar Dominion, the pride of his empire, was nothing here against humans. All pride was dust. The human dreadnoughts pressed closer. Their weapons lit the void like burning suns. Zelthar ships exploded one after another, their crews swallowed by flames and silence. The survivors could not even retreat. Every path was sealed, every escape already closed. The humans had prepared this battlefield with precision. They had waited for arrogance to step into the trap. And when it did, they showed their true face. It was not the face of diplomats, not the face of explorers. It was the face of predators who had survived every storm, every war, every trial forced upon them, and in that face, the Zelthar saw what the galaxy had always feared. Humans were not strong because of their ships. They were strong because they never yielded, because they turned every fight into survival, and survival made them merciless. The bridge of Varen's ship shook violently as another blast rocked their shields. Crew members screamed, systems failed, alarms cried out. He looked at the stars one last time and whispered, "So this is humanity's truth. Not glory, not conquest, not even hate, but cold, perfect destruction." The humans had given them a chance to leave, and they had refused. Now the only lesson left was fire. One final order came across the human comm, simple, clear, and final. Erase them. The stars lit up as humanity's war machine moved as one. The true face of humans revealed not in words, but in action. And the Zelthar Dominion finally understood why no one entered human space and returned alive. The one-way ticket. The void burned with fire as the human fleet closed in. The Zelthar had come to prove their strength, to carve their name into history. But now they understood the truth. History would not remember them as conquerors. It would remember them only as a warning. Another fleet that entered human space and never returned. Ships that once stood proud now burned like dying stars. Every explosion lit the darkness with terrible beauty. But there was no victory in that light, only death. The Zelthar fleet was being erased piece by piece. Methodical, merciless, unstoppable. One cruiser tried to run, its engines flaring with desperate speed. For a moment its crew felt hope. The stars ahead looked clear, open, free. Then a shadow passed across their screens. A human warship appeared directly in their path as if it had always been there. Waiting, the Zelthar ship fired, weapons blazing. But the human vessel responded with a single strike. The fleeing cruiser vanished in silence, leaving nothing but dust. Across the fleet, panic turned into chaos. Captains shouted over each other, some ordering retreat, others begging for surrender. None of it mattered. Every escape route was sealed, every plea swallowed in the cold dark. The humans had not come to negotiate. They had come to finish what had begun. Varen's flagship still stood, shields cracking, weapons failing. On his bridge, the commander's pride had collapsed into a hollow shell. His officers looked at him with wide, hopeless eyes. "Commander," one begged, "we must send a surrender signal. They must hear us." But another officer shook his head, his voice breaking. "They gave us a choice when we entered. We ignored it. They will not give us another." The humans struck again, this time with a storm of drones. The machines tore into engines, drilled into hulls, and split ships open like fragile glass. The cries of dying crews filled the comms, then cut off into silence one by one. Every death was another nail sealing the Zelthar's fate. Every explosion another reminder that there was no road home. For every 10 Zelthar ships destroyed, perhaps one human ship took a scratch, and even those scratches were repaired mid-battle. The humans fought not with desperation, but with certainty. They had promised that none would leave alive, and they were keeping that promise with absolute precision. Varen stood silent now, staring at the tactical map. Red markers, once proud symbols of his fleet, flickered and vanished. Each loss felt like a blade in his chest, but deeper than the pain was the realization that he had brought them here. His arrogance, his laughter at old warnings, his hunger for glory. It had turned his entire fleet into nothing more than fuel for human fire. At last the human voice returned, cold, final, like a verdict that had been waiting all along. "This is human space," it said. "You entered uninvited, and there is only one way out." The crew held their breath, hearts pounding, and then the words fell like iron. "Death is your ticket." The humans attacked in unison, their fleets moving as one living storm. Beams cut across the void. Missiles streaked like falling stars. Drones swarmed like hungry predators. Zelthar ships exploded by the dozens, ripped apart before they could even turn. There was no fight left, no defense, no chance. It was not a battle anymore, it was execution. Varen gripped the railing of his bridge as his flagship shook violently. Screens went dark, systems collapsed. Crew members screamed. He looked into the dark, his voice a whisper no one could hear. "If only we had listened." The words vanished into silence as another blast tore through his ship. The flagship cracked apart, swallowed by the same fire that had claimed the rest. And then it was over. The void fell silent again. The flames fading, the wreckage drifting, not a single Zelthar vessel remained. Not a single crew returned. The humans had kept their word. Anyone who entered uninvited received only one-way passage. A ticket paid in fire and sealed in silence for the galaxy. This battle would become another warning, told in whispers carved into records feared by all who dreamed of conquest. And for humanity, it was only routine. Another border defended, another arrogant empire erased. The rule remained unchanged, as clear as the stars. No one entered human space uninvited, unless they wanted a one-way ticket. The final warning, the battlefield was silent once more. Where a proud Zelthar fleet had once flown, now only drifting wreckage remained. Burning husks floated like broken lanterns in the endless dark. The fire faded slowly, leaving behind only silence. The kind of silence that carried meaning heavier than words. The humans did not celebrate. They did not boast. Their fleets moved with calm precision, collecting debris, securing the border. To them, this was not glory, it was duty. They had defended their space as they always promised. Without hesitation, without mercy, without failure. Among the wreckage, one crippled ship still drifted. Its engines dead, its crew half mad with fear. The humans allowed it to live, not out of kindness, but for a purpose. That broken vessel was a message. The survivors were not spared as allies. They were spared as witnesses. Witnesses who would carry the story back to the galaxy. Inside that shattered ship, the Zelthar survivors whispered in terror. Their commander was gone, their fleet destroyed, their pride crushed. All they had left were trembling voices and a memory carved deep into their souls. A memory of dreadnoughts moving like mountains, of hunters striking from shadows, of a cold voice that spoke judgment without anger. They knew no one would doubt them, because the fear in their eyes would be proof enough. When that ship finally limped out of human space, carrying only survivors and silence, every empire listened. The Karen, the Draylen, the Terran, even the ancient ones who ruled for millennia. They all received the same report. Zelthar fleet destroyed. No survivors except a few broken souls. And the message repeated in every tongue, "You have entered human space uninvited. And none will leave alive." The galaxy shivered. Some called it brutality. Others called it justice. But all agreed on one truth. Human borders were now the most feared in the stars. No empire dared to test them again. For if 30 warships could vanish without a trace, what chance did anyone else have? Councils across the galaxy changed their maps. Where once there were dotted lines of disputed borders, now thick black barriers marked human space. No one questioned those borders. No one argued. They were written not on star charts but in blood and wreckage. The rule was clear and eternal, carved into the hearts of all who looked upon the stars. In the halls of power, whispers grew into warnings. Never cross into their space, leaders told their fleets. Never underestimate them, scholars told their students. Never mock the humans, veterans told their children, because all of them knew what would follow. A one-way ticket paid in fire and silence back on Earth. The humans remained calm, their soldiers did not cheer. Their admirals did not brag. To them, the destruction of the Zelthar fleet was just another day. Another defense, another proof that they stood united. For humanity had learned long ago that survival was not won by words. It was won by action, by resolve, by never allowing arrogance to go unanswered. The galaxy watched in silence as humanity grew stronger. Their fleets expanded, their weapons sharpened. Their eyes fixed not on conquest but on defense. They had no desire for empires, no hunger for thrones, but if anyone dared to cross their borders uninvited, the outcome would never change. The Zelthar had proven it, the legends had confirmed it, and the final warning had been delivered. From that day onward, every race remembered the lesson. Do not test the children of Earth. Do not step into their space without invitation, for there is no path back. No way home, no second chance, there is only silence, wreckage, and fear, and above all the eternal law of the stars. No one enters human space uninvited and returns alive.